When people ask about my childhood, I usually say it was quiet. That word feels safe, neutral. But the truth is, it wasn't quiet. It was silencing. My name is Rachel, and I'm 38 years old. I didn't grow up in poverty. We always had food on the table and a roof over our heads. But love, attention, recognition, that was always reserved for someone else. My younger sister, Savannah. Everything changed when I was 8. I remember being woken in the middle of the night by my dad, Mark, whispering to Aunt Karen in the hallway. My mum, Lydia, had gone into early labour. There was panic in the air, though no one said the word premature to me at the time. Just that the baby was coming way too early. Savannah was born frail, tiny, like a porcelain doll. I remember peeking at her in the NICU once, tubes snaking out of her like vines. Everyone cried when she finally came home. They called it a miracle. But for me, it was the beginning of vanishing. Our house became a sterile bubble. Everything was sanitized, bleached, wiped down to within an inch of its life. The lemony sting of disinfectant became the smell of home. One morning I sneezed, just a sneeze, but Lydia whipped around like I detonated a bomb. "Was that a cough?" "Rachel," she demanded, "we can't take any chances. Pack a bag, you're going to Grandma's." And so I went, again and again. Grandma's house, Aunt Karen's house. I was passed around like a liability. At first, it felt like an adventure, but by the time I turned 10, I understood. I wasn't being protected, I was being removed. I started whispering my achievements into the mirror. I got an A+. I read 300 pages last night. I was cast as Juliet in the school play. There was no one else to tell. At home, everything was Savannah. Her breathing, her sleep, her progress, her delicate needs. I still remember the science fair when I was 12. I had spent weeks building a mini eco-biosphere from scratch. It won first place. I came home beaming, holding the trophy like it was made of solid gold. "Look, Mom," I said, chest heaving with pride. "I won." Lydia glanced at the trophy. "That's nice. Did you wash your hands?" Savannah's got a little cough. And just like that, my joy disappeared. Again. By the time Savannah was 7, she had fully recovered from her early health issues. Strong, energetic, and sharp. But our parents didn't adjust. They still hovered, still coddled, still lived as if she might collapse at any moment. And Savannah noticed. She learned quickly how to manipulate that concern. A slight sniffle earned her a day off school. A pout got her out of chores. Tears? That was her nuclear option. High school was supposed to be my time. I buried myself in books, clubs, and leadership programs. I was ranked top of my class, joined the robotics team, and wrote for the school paper. But my accomplishments never made it past the front door. Once, my science teacher called to tell my parents I had been nominated for a scholarship program. "Rachel is brilliant," he said, "a future engineer." But right in the middle of that conversation, Lydia's phone buzzed. Savannah, crying over the phone, "My favourite pen broke. I can't study with this one. It's scratchy. I hate it." They left immediately, not even an apology. That scholarship never got discussed again. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't come. When I brought the trophy home, Lydia tucked it into a drawer. "Savannah doesn't like seeing other people's awards," she murmured as if that were reason enough. By then, I'd stopped trying. I got accepted into Holloway State University on a full ride. Tuition, room, meals. It should have been a moment of celebration. Instead, when I walked into the kitchen to share the news, Savannah rolled her eyes and muttered, "Finally, I'm turning your room into a streaming studio. I need at least 3 monitors." That's when I started counting the days. College wouldn't just be an education, it would be escape. College felt like breathing after holding it in for 10 years. I arrived at Holloway State with 2 suitcases, 0 expectations, and a soul starved for independence. I stayed in a modest dorm with peeling paint and a broken heater, but to me, it was a palace. No hand sanitizer fog in the air, no one obsessively checking my temperature, no Savannah. While most students went home for holidays, I stayed back. I picked up shifts at the library, cleaned classrooms, worked the front desk at the student centre. It wasn't glamorous, but I was determined to make it. And I did, with no parental help and no contact beyond the occasional call that started with, "How's school?" and ended with a 10-minute monologue about Savannah's latest crisis. I never said no to them, not yet. Some part of me still hoped that if I did enough, succeeded enough, maybe they'd finally see me. That hope cracked the summer before my final year. I had landed an internship at a rising tech startup. It paid little, but it was a foot in the door. The interview was virtual. And I had stayed up all night rehearsing. Right before it started, I got a frantic call from Lydia. "Rachel, it's Savannah," she cried. "She's having a panic attack." Savannah had found a spider in her room. That was it. No actual panic attack, just drama. But I missed my interview. The recruiter rescheduled out of pity, but the slot was given to someone else. I spent that night on the dorm floor, eyes burning with rage I couldn't release. They never asked if I got the job. I never told them I didn't. I graduated summa cum laude. No one came to the ceremony. Instead, Lydia texted me halfway through the speeches. "Savannah might have strep. Can you Google natural remedies?" It was like living in the shadow of a storm that had passed, yet everyone still carried umbrellas. Savannah was fine, perfectly healthy, but our parents kept pretending she was fragile, and Savannah knew exactly how to use it. When I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in the city and started working at Lebanon Row, I sent my parents a photo of my office view. Lydia's only response was, "Savannah's new roommate has a Gucci backpack. Can you believe the pressure she's under?" I stopped sending updates after that. My job paid decently, enough to afford rent and student supplies. I was working 10-hour days, sometimes longer. But something inside me whispered, this isn't it. I wanted more than survival. One night, scrolling through videos while eating stale cereal, an ad caught my eye. "Want to make your money work for you? Join our free investing webinar tonight only." Normally I'd skip it, but I clicked. That's when I first saw Julian Wells. He wasn't some flashy salesman with gold watches and fake enthusiasm. He spoke calmly, precisely, like someone who knew things others didn't. "Wealth grows best in silence," he said. "Not through luck, but through discipline, patience, and strategy." That line struck me so hard, I paused the video and rewound it 3 times. I signed up for his online course the next day. It wasn't free. $199. That meant 2 weeks of instant noodles and no Ubers. I clicked enroll anyway. It started small, buying fractional shares of tech companies I'd researched at night after work. I studied market trends, learned to read earnings reports, and stayed up watching stock tickers like a heartbeat monitor. My first gain was $18.47. I celebrated it like a lottery win. Then, a biotech company I'd invested $375 into announced a breakthrough drug. Within 6 months, it had quadrupled. Suddenly, I had over $500 sitting in that account. I didn't cash out. I reinvested. I learned to track dips, to diversify, to risk wisely. By the time I turned 26, my portfolio was worth $48,000. I didn't tell anyone, especially not my family. I still worked at Lebanon Row, now a mid-level manager. My title gave me just enough invisibility to keep building behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Savannah was living large at Pendleton College, an overpriced private school in New Hampshire. Lydia and Mark took out 3 separate loans to cover her tuition, housing, and personal expenses, which apparently included a luxury hair straightener and a subscription to a Wine of the Month club. When I asked if Savannah ever worked part-time, Lydia laughed. "She's too delicate, Rachel. She needs to focus on her mental health. Besides, she gets so anxious." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I made another investment in a small AI firm no one was talking about. $950 this time. In 6 months, it would be worth 10 times that. And I would start to realize that being overlooked had its advantages. By the time I turned 27, I had 2 lives. In one, I was Rachel, the modest, bright-sheet, dependable daughter with a solid job in management. I wore affordable blouses, brought casseroles to family dinners, and nodded politely when Savannah talked about Pendleton's elite culture. In the other, I was quietly turning 5-figure investments into 6. My apartment had no mortgage. The deed was in my name. I had no roommates, no debt, and no one who knew what I was truly building. I didn't even tell Jasmine, my closest friend since college, until she visited and noticed I was using an imported espresso machine that cost more than her rent. "Rachel," she said, narrowing her eyes, "are you running drugs?" I laughed. Then I told her everything. She didn't judge, she listened. But I'll never forget what she said before leaving that night. "Just be careful. Once people know you have money, they stop seeing you. They only see the access." At the time, I shrugged it off. I shouldn't have. My parents never asked what I earned. Not really. They assumed I made enough to get by, and that was fine with me. It allowed me to exist in the background while they obsessed over Savannah. Savannah, who had now discovered her passion for digital content creation and was demanding a 4th year at Pendleton so she could finish a media marketing specialization. Lydia's voice trembled when she said it. "We don't know how we'll afford it, but how can we not give her this chance?" One evening, I dropped by the house for dinner. The first thing I saw was Savannah stretched out on the couch, in leggings that probably cost more than my first laptop. "Hey," I said, "how's school?" She barely looked up. "Stressed. Can't sleep. Everyone's richer than me. It's like I'm the poor girl." I didn't respond. Later that night, I caught Lydia crying at the kitchen table, a thick stack of bills in front of her. Mark sat beside her, running his hands through his thinning hair. "Tuition's up again," he muttered, "and property taxes, utilities." Something in me stirred, an old, tattered hope. Maybe if I helped just a little, they'd see me, really see me. That night, I set up an automatic bank transfer, $2,000 a month. Quiet, unannounced. The next week, Lydia called me in tears. "Oh, Rachel, this helps so much. Thank you, sweetheart." Sweetheart. I hadn't heard that word from her in years. The gesture seemed to shift something, briefly. Suddenly, I was invited to more dinners. Lydia started texting me occasionally with things like, "How's work?" or "Hope you're eating well." I wanted to believe we were finally healing, but it didn't last. At one dinner, I casually mentioned I was thinking of moving. Lydia's brow furrowed. "To a cheaper place. Rent must be hard with your job title. It's so unstable these days." I stared at her. I had just closed a deal that made me $80,000 in a single morning. My portfolio had crossed $2.8 million. I owned my apartment. But she still thought I was scraping by. I nodded. "Yeah, something smaller." "Just don't do anything reckless, honey," she replied. "We can't all be as lucky as Savannah." That was the end of that. The next family gathering was supposed to be about me. Aunt Karen asked about my new place. Before I could answer, Lydia cut in. "Oh, she's renting somewhere downtown. But wait until you hear what Savannah's doing. She's just landed an interview with a brand firm in LA. They love her aesthetic." Cue the usual chorus of praise. Savannah, this, Savannah, that. And then, as if fate had a sense of irony, my cousin's wife whispered, "She's probably just going to end up in retail like the rest of the pretty ones. I mean, Rachel actually works." I heard her. So did Savannah. She bristled, her smile faltering, her eyes locked on mine like I was responsible for the insult. Later that night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You think you're better than me now?" she hissed, wine sloshing in her glass. I blinked. "What?" "I know what people say, that you're the quiet achiever, that I'm just the spoiled one. But I'm going to be successful. Real success. Not pushing spreadsheets at some boring office." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I did neither. Instead, I said, "Then I guess you don't need the extra $800 Mum just asked me for to help cover your rent." She flinched, but only for a second. "I'm the reason they even care about you," she spat, and she walked away. The next morning, I checked my portfolio again. 3.6 million and growing. Thanksgiving arrived like it always did, wrapped in tradition and tension. Every year, Lydia insisted on cooking everything herself. She claimed it was about love, but what it really was control. She ran that kitchen like a war room. Mark peeled potatoes like a man being punished. Savannah hovered, doing nothing, always too anxious to help. But this year, Lydia threw her back, outlifting a load of Savannah's laundry from the dryer. "I don't know how I'm going to manage Thanksgiving," she moaned over the phone, half crying, half cooking with her voice. "I can barely stand, Rachel. 20 people. I don't want to disappoint everyone." "Let me handle it," I offered. "I'll get it catered. The new Mediterranean place downtown is amazing." A pause. "You do that?" she asked, her voice softening. "Rachel, that's really generous." I could practically hear Savannah in the background, groaning. On the day of, I arrived early to help plate everything, set up the tables, even arranged small printed menus. Jasmine had helped me plan the entire meal, 2 weeks in advance. Tabbouleh, lamb, roasted vegetables, rice pilaf, fresh hummus, no turkey this year, and frankly, no one missed it. Except Savannah. As we set the platters down, she sniffed. "Store-bought! Wow! Nothing says family love like shrink-wrapped dolmas." I ignored her. I had brought my laptop with me to quietly monitor the Asian stock markets. There was a high-risk investment I'd made in a Singapore-based semiconductor company, and it was scheduled to spike or crash over dinner. I tucked the laptop in my old childhood bedroom, away from the noise. I left it running, password protected, but the banking app was open in another tab. Stupid, I know. But I trusted they'd all be too busy gossiping about Savannah to notice. Dinner was delicious. Everyone complimented the food, except Savannah, who picked at it and offered backhanded comments like, "It's okay, just doesn't taste like home." Then Lydia stood up carefully, holding her back and her wine. "I want to say thank you," she said to the room, lifting her glass. "To Rachel, for organising all this. I couldn't have done it this year. Not with my injury. She really stepped up." A warm murmur of agreement spread around the table. Aunt Karen smiled at me. "That was really kind of you, Rachel. Must have cost a fortune." "Oh, it's nothing," I said, brushing it off. "Just glad everyone's enjoying it." "She earns enough," Lydia added proudly. "Her job helps us quite a bit. I mean, not like Savannah's future salary, of course, but Rachel's steady." That was the first time Lydia had openly acknowledged anything I did in front of the family. And that, apparently, was enough to detonate Savannah. She shoved her chair back with a screech, face flushed, lips trembling with indignation. Everyone turned toward her, startled. Without saying a word, she stormed out of the dining room. I sighed. "She'll cool down," I muttered. She didn't. 5 minutes later, she came back, and she was holding my laptop. The smile on her face was venomous. I think we should see just how steady Rachel really is, she said, lifting the device for all to see. Since she's so generous, I'm sure she won't mind if I show everyone her bank balance. My blood turned to ice. Savannah, put it down. But it was too late. She turned the screen to the room. The banking app, still open. 10 navas of 126,030, 7 to 8. No one spoke. Aunt Karen's fork dropped onto her plate with a sharp clang. My cousin Greg let out a stunned laugh, half choke. Lydia's eyes bulged as if she were trying to comprehend a foreign language. Mark's jaw hung open. Savannah, the colour draining from her face now, whispered, 10 million? I stood up slowly. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out calm. I haven't worked at Levin & Rowe in years, I said. I left to invest full-time. I built a portfolio. I studied markets. I've been doing this quietly, on my own, for nearly a decade. You mean... Lydia's voice cracked. You're... rich? I nodded. Yes. The silence shattered. You've had $10 million and you let us struggle, Lydia screamed, standing up so fast she nearly knocked over her wine glass. You watched us take loans for Savannah. You knew we were drowning. I stared at her. I send you $2,000 a month. Lydia wasn't hearing me. Her face turned a furious shade of red. Your sister has loans. She has needs. And you hoarded all this money like some kind of dragon, Mark chimed in, his voice shaking. We raised you better than this, Rachel. We taught you to care about family. Something inside me snapped. I had swallowed every dismissal, every forgotten birthday, every time they turned away from me to cater to Savannah's whims. And now, this? No, I said, my voice suddenly sharp. You didn't raise me. You neglected me. You built Savannah's life out of my silence. The whole table went still. You didn't save for my college, I continued. You didn't come to my graduation. You didn't help with rent or celebrate when I got promoted or even ask what I do. You dismissed every single achievement I ever had. And when I helped, you didn't say thank you. You asked for more. Savannah's face crumpled. I didn't know. I cut her off. No, you didn't want to know. You never asked. Lydia stepped forward. You owe us. We're your parents. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. No, Lydia, I owed you nothing. And now I'm done. And with that, I walked out. The wind hit my face the second I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. Inside that house, the shouting had already resumed. Lydia's voice, shrill and panicked, echoed out onto the porch. Mark was bellowing something about betrayal and ungratefulness. I could hear Savannah crying, loud, theatrical sobs. Always the victim, even now. I didn't look back. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already buzzing. Missed call, Mom. Voicemail, Savannah. Another missed call, Dad. Texts began pouring in like a dam breaking. Some angry, some pleading. Rachel, you don't understand how much we're struggling. Don't punish your family just because you're bitter. How could you hide this? How could you do this to us? Your sister is humiliated. Fix this. I turned my phone off and drove home in silence. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, my own table in the apartment I owned outright, and opened my banking app. The automatic monthly transfer of $3,500 was still active. I'd increased it months ago after Lydia cried to me over Savannah's student loan payments. They'd told me they were drowning, that Savannah deserved to breathe. They hadn't even asked, just expected, and I had given it, like I always had. Quietly, anonymously, like the love they never gave me. I hovered over the transfer, paused, then tapped, cancel. Just like that, it was over. The next day, it began again, only this time on social media. Lydia's Facebook post was a masterpiece of public manipulation. It breaks my heart to discover my eldest daughter has been secretly hoarding wealth while her family suffered. Her sister is drowning in student loans. We're aging, she's refused to help. Sometimes money changes people. Please pray for Rachel, that she rediscovers the meaning of family. It went viral, at least in our suburban circle of family friends, distant cousins and church acquaintances. The comments poured in. This is heartbreaking. How could she? Unbelievable. Rachel always seemed so cold. Savannah has such a kind heart. She deserves better. People who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly full of opinions. Even my old piano teacher chimed in. I didn't reply. I couldn't. There was no point. You can't argue with people who've already decided your narrative for you. Jasmine was furious. They're painting you as a villain because you had the nerve to succeed without permission, she said, pacing my living room. This isn't just toxic. This is public abuse. She was right. And still, a part of me hurt deeply. I hadn't just lost a family. I'd lost the idea of one, the illusion I had clung to, that maybe if I just gave more, did more, was more, they'd finally love me back. But they didn't want love. They wanted access. And now they had none. A week later, Lydia showed up at my apartment building with Savannah. They weren't let in. James, the front desk manager, called to warn me. They made a scene, said they were your family, threatened to call the police. You want me to put them on the do not allow list? Yes, I said. Add them, all of them. He didn't even ask why. That night, I sat down with a cup of tea and opened Zillow. Vermont, Oregon, British Columbia. Small towns with crisp air and no family names whispered at dinner tables. Places where the word obligation didn't come bundled with guilt. I clicked through listings, wooded cottages, mountain homes, places where no one knew Savannah's GPA or Lydia's sob stories, and I felt relief. Not sadness, not guilt, relief. I had finally stopped bleeding for people who never noticed I was bleeding in the first place. They saw me now, but only because the ATM had shut down. Too late. A year passed, 12 full months without a single dinner invite, tearful phone call, or half-hearted, "How are you?" masked in guilt-tripping. I had blocked every number they could reach me on, changed my email, left social media. By summer, I had left the city altogether. I bought a home in Vermont, 3 hours from the nearest airport, nestled on a hillside with wraparound porches and snow-dusted pines in the winter. No one knew me here. No one cared what my sister studied, what my parents thought I owed them, or how much money I had. Peace wasn't loud. It was quiet, like me. I had started a nonprofit, Elevate Her. Its mission was simple: teach financial literacy and investment skills to underprivileged young women. I funded it myself. No investors, no board. Just me, my spreadsheets, and a growing network of women who were learning to build what I had built, but faster, safer, and with someone who actually believed in them. One morning, I received an unexpected email. From Julian Wells. Subject, guest speaker. Opportunity. Rachel, heard about Elevate Her. Very impressive. Would love to have you co-host a workshop at the annual Finsight Summit in New York. You've built something extraordinary. Let's show people how it's done. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I smiled. Not because of the opportunity, but because someone had finally seen me. Not what I could give. Not what I owed. Me. I flew to New York 2 weeks later. The event was held in a high-rise conference center overlooking the Hudson. Rows of bright-eyed attendees packed the auditorium, young professionals, students, aspiring investors. I took the stage with Julian. We spoke about compound interest, behavioral finance, and long-term wealth strategy. The crowd asked questions, took notes, listened, and then, during the break, I saw her, Savannah, standing in the back of the room, dressed in business casual she had clearly borrowed. Her makeup was faded at the edges. She looked tired, older, smaller. She walked up slowly, almost unsure of herself. For once. There was no swagger, no smirk, just a hollow kind of humility. "Rachel," she said softly, "I didn't know you were this." I said nothing. She looked down, twisting her hands. "I saw the non-profit, the videos I've been following quietly. I didn't want to reach out before because, well, I figured you'd block me again. But," she paused, swallowing hard, "I've made mistakes. I know that. I thought if I could just get one thing right, maybe I could ask if you'd give me a second chance. Not money, just maybe help, advice." There it was. Not a demand, not a performance, a plea. But I didn't answer. Not directly. The moderator called us back to the stage. I turned to Savannah and gave her the smallest nod. Neither forgiveness nor rejection, just acknowledgement. A flicker of recognition that maybe, growth was possible. Then I stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright. The room was full. I looked out at the crowd of strangers, all waiting, all eager, all listening, and I said, "For years, I thought my worth was measured by who noticed me, who clapped when I won, who showed up. But sometimes, your worth is measured by who can't ignore you anymore. You don't need to be loud, or flashy, or even understood. You just need to build something no one can take from you. That's wealth, that's power, that's freedom." Applause erupted, and behind it all, I saw Savannah, still standing, still watching. But I didn't go to her. I had already spent a lifetime chasing her shadow. Now she could sit in mine,